It's a yes bank maximum, the first of this contest. Oh, that is brilliant. It's a hero maximum. On the ground, down the ground, another hero maximum.
Righto, welcome back to the Maximum Cricket Podcast. My name is Munter, and we have a full crew on for episode 33. Lugsy and Jacko, it's been a minute. How are we all?
Good, mate. Good. How are you?
One more day of work and then a bit of time off, so happy days.
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks, mate. I was going to say, most obviously probably think with the number 33, maybe your Larry Birds, but I think certainly in our circles it is reserved for 33.
Yeah, your exports.
Your Scotty Pippins, your Simon Cromartys.
Yeah, these sort of guys.
Yeah, and so the next big one will be episode 333. So just tune in. Yeah, tune in 5 years' time. So yeah, like this is obviously this will be a last podcast for 2022, and we thought, let's do another mailbag pod. We had a good time last time, me and Lugsy, but with to have us all three on board for a mailbag, it'll be a perfect way to sign the year off. Boys, we'll get straight into it. It's going to be around England, Pakistan to start with. First question: how high is Rehan Ahmed's ceiling? From David Murphy 3497. First of all, great question. I'm not going to go crazy and do the whole, he's going to be the next Warnie, but youngest men's Test cricketer for England at 18. In the second innings, he takes 5 for 48. Becomes the youngest debutant to take a fifer and sixth youngest ever. As much as I say it's hard, I don't want to go too crazy. It's pretty hard not to when you've got an 18-year-old leg spinner doing well. Boys, what do you make of him?
Yeah, good player. As you said, he started with a hiss and a roar, but I suppose it's when we're talking ceilings, it's going to be tough to, I suppose, for him to play home games for England until Leach retires. Look, he's going to be in that Test squad for the next, if he keeps playing like this, 15 years. So, maybe England's greatest spinner. There you go.
That's a hugely high ceiling, Jack. I'll rate that highly. Yeah, these are the questions I feel that are more like you want to answer with a bit of fun rather than take it too seriously, because trying to put a ceiling on a guy who's like 18 years old is a pretty tough ask. And sometimes if they put the ceiling too high, it's sort of not even beneficial for the guy.
Yeah.
I think the thing with most cricketers, I think you've sort of got two big times in your career, and one's right at the start because you're unknown at this point. So you've it is actually one of the best chances to do well, because soon enough he would have played 10, 15 tests. There'll be that much tape on him. Everyone will sort of figure out his balls, and that's when it gets a lot harder. So you're almost one of your best chances to actually do well, and we're probably seeing it with Harry Brook, who we'll get to a bit later, is actually right at the start. So, I don't know. It's always fun, obviously, to talk about young guys and their ceiling, but the best thing to do is just sort of give it 20 tests, 15, 20 tests, and see from there where we're going.
He's earned himself, he'll be in the Test squad now, for a wee bit. He'll sort of be around these boys. He'll be a subcontinent tourist and probably play in the subcontinent for a bit, but yeah, it's going to take some breaking into that England side, especially at home.
Yeah, at home is probably going to be the test. He's not going to play every test from now on and for the next 15 years sort of thing. But he's only played in good spinning conditions. It'll be interesting to see how he goes. And like Jacko said, home conditions, because it does feel like Test cricket's moving away from leg spinners. It does become tougher because people just want accuracy, which a finger spinner can give you that. But it's not like Jack Leach is Nathan Lyon or Ashwin. He's not that kind of level. So I wouldn't say he's locked it up forever. There's a place, and I think he can also bat, which is quite handy because he could bat away around that sort of 8. Nighthawk Junior. He's been named, which we could probably touch on now. It wasn't a question, but England chucking him in at 3. How does that sit with you boys?
Yeah, I suppose it's like 2-0 up in an away test series. Like, this is just Stokes' leadership at a pinnacle is what it's getting thrown out at. But, like, I mean, he gets out, Stokes gets out, and 2 other blokes get out to spin that night. Like, suddenly it's a disaster. It's like, why the fuck have you sent a guy in to have a look? Yeah, I mean, I'm never a fan of, like, I'm barely over the line for night watchmen. So, yeah, Nighthawk's in the bin.
I just think on that though, what an insane environment he's came into it. Like, you really couldn't ask for anything better.
No,
He'll be
100%.
absolutely brimming with confidence, and I'm sure Stokesy and Baz are just like feeding him up and, you know, just telling him to express himself and sort of go out and do his thing. So you couldn't, and maybe that was just even a small part of it. Like, this young guy's full of confidence. Let's just give him a crack out there. I mean, would you want that being the go-to in all tests? Probably not. It feels a bit junior cricket, but
yeah, feels a bit reverse the order. How you going, doesn't it?
yeah, like as we were saying, it's sort of like when you're in junior cricket and there's a guy that sort of bats 9 and doesn't bowl, and then occasionally like, fuck, we got to chuck this guy in at 3 just to say we done something with him for the season. But that wasn't the case in this one, and so yeah, I mean, fun for him, but I don't know if you'd want to be in the norm.
It feels a touch disrespectful to the opposition, just a wee bit, because it's like your own. Like, I don't know, like, why wouldn't you just send out your number 3 like your normal? It's not like Pope's been like blocking up one end, like he's been going at like 90. So, I mean, hey, they won. So what are you going to do? You know, speaking of that test, we'll go on to our next question. Another sort of superstar. Probably a lot further along. Well, definitely, actually. So this question is thoughts on Harry Brook.
Can I just butt in with how much I enjoyed that question? Just thoughts on Harry Brook. Sort of just very open. Can take that anywhere we like.
Yeah, just general thoughts.
General thoughts on Harry Brook.
Yeah, I like it. So, like, well, let's start with the stats. You know, 4 tests, 480 runs at 80 with a strike rate of 92. This is test cricket, by the way. 300s in 6 innings. In his second test, he hit 6 fours in an over, and then responded with there were 6 bad balls. I put them away, and then that was the most by an Englishman in a test for an over. Then in the second innings, he broke that record. Man of the match in the last 2 tests, and man of the series. Fair to say, this kid's pretty good. Boys, what I probably was most impressed about him was not necessarily the quick fire 150 in the first test, although, I mean, it was impressive. But I would say just the fact that in the next 2 tests, in tougher conditions, he can change gears to suit and still score runs. I mean, I think he's going to be fucking good. Where do you boys sit?
Yeah, let's wait and see what he does on a green one at the Gabba, probably.
Can't score runs in England.
Yeah, fuck, I bet he can't score runs in England. Yeah, I mean, obviously a pretty impressive start. It's probably to have that freedom in Test 1 to, I think he struck at like 120 or 110 in Test 1 when they were just going ballistic, and like on debut on like probably the biggest day of your cricketing life to like have the freedom and stuff to go out and do that. I think that's probably more like a reflection of the environment, not just his ability. Because there's plenty of guys that play cricket now that could do that, but then like probably aren't put in a position to do that, if that makes sense. So yeah, he's obviously fucking one hell of a stick, but I think everything has just culminated to like this perfect sort of first tour for him, and yeah, hopefully it's sky's the limit. But yeah, hell of a decision when Bairstow comes back.
Yeah, I think you hit you all sort of hit the nail on the head of like there's a combination of things here. One, take nothing away from an absolutely insane series, and to see him like not just go out and smash it like in that first innings, which was absolutely insane, that first innings of that first test. But then to dig in a bit harder in the second and third test as well and still do a job. But I think it still is a valid point to say, like, what are we going to be looking at 10 to 15 and tests in when he's had to go to Aussie, South Africa, play back at home in England, like the working over of test cricket, sort of test after test and delivering game after game. Sort of same thing I said earlier, like this is a start now where his weaknesses probably aren't exposed as much as they will get exposed. Like everything,
video and whatnot.
Yeah, and the amount of video they'll watch on him, even if it's only a small weakness, like there will be one and it will get peppered. So then he's sort of just got to find that answer of finding a way if his weakness is not to go out. But, I mean, yeah, take nothing away from these guys. It's absolutely insane what they're doing and, yeah, pretty impressive.
Yeah, he reminds me of like a young Kevin Peterson. Like I know Stokes was saying he could be like Coley playing all three formats, which feels aggressive to just call someone Coley. But like Kevin Peterson, he just reminds me, just the levers, just the way he sort of picks up long levers. Like he's sort of playing spin so well. He seems to like pull it when it's like halfway up the stumps. But, he can obviously, it's going to be interesting when he does have to dig in. Like, Lugsy, you said there's going to be harder, get the Ashes next year. Even the two tests in New Zealand, if we prepare some green seamers, it could be interesting. Yeah, but I think this kind of like this 3-format player, because I guess like Harry Brooks got the opportunity to be a 3-format sort of player, and it sort of links in with our next question from a listener. The question is, do you think sides should have 3-format players or just format specialists? By ZJ Tar 27. I guess like it does feel like we are losing more and more 3-format players from world cricket with the amount of games scheduled. Like it doesn't seem to be slowing down. I mean, sometimes we've got 2 teams playing at the same time, sort of stuff. Harry Brooks, like he can play all 3 formats, but will it last? I don't know. But like I would say, like with nations like New Zealand, the smaller nations with a bit of less coin, I think you'll see more 3-format players just because like they don't get paid as much as those big 3 nations where they can afford to specialise. Like people talk about Jimmy Anderson and how the best thing he did was to stop playing white ball cricket after 2015. Like I can't imagine, like Tim Southee could have done that a while ago, and he probably could play till he's 38, but I can't imagine he could afford to do that, like playing 4 or 5 tests a year, not going to the IPL, things like that. Whereas, in England, I'm sure Jimmy's on fucking good coin playing test cricket for England. But, then again, teams like New Zealand might not play test cricket for much longer, so who knows? Boys, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the question shaped around should teams have 3-format players. And I don't really, I mean, ideally, you would just pick your best 11 players in each format for me. I think nowadays the players are so versed in like having to adjust from format to format that if they're good enough to play all 3, then they can. That's no problem. And I guess is it better to have the same blokes always around each other? There's probably an argument for that, but I'd say there's an argument the other way as well in terms of getting sort of fresh players in and always, keeping things moving in a side. But I think the question, as I say, is shaped at teams, but I think it's more on the players these days. It's going to be, are players wanting to be 3-format players, or are they going to look at the schedule and decide, like, I'm white ball or I'm red ball, or am I T20s and tests and just skip the ODI format? So I think as much as sort of the teams would like to have their pick of all players available, I think this is further and further just looking into like players making the call on that and not the teams.
Yeah, for sure. I think it comes down to like a couple of things of like where your players are going to sit on their list is like T20 cricket is what pays the bills and red ball cricket's what drives a lot of players. So a lot of players will have red ball cricket, sort of long format cricket as their pinnacle. Like most guys that want to make it in cricket want to make it in first class cricket. Like their sort of dream is to play that first class game or that first test for New Zealand, and then sort of playing the T20 is what actually sort of makes you your money in your career. So I can see, as we've sort of discussed, we could see the one-day format eventually just falling away, and then you are going to just have sort of two format players. But yeah, I suppose it just comes down to the crossover. Like your skill set is the same. Like most guys have all the shots, but some guys like want to do it for 5 days, and some guys want to do it for 3 hours. So yeah, it comes down to the individual. It comes down to scheduling, as you said. Like New Zealand, you probably don't have the leverage. Like if you look at someone like a Wagner, he's a test specialist. He might play 4 games for New Zealand a year. Like he's not playing a lot of games for New Zealand. So yeah, for those smaller countries who are putting resources into less guys, they'll be wanting to get their money's worth. So they'll be wanting 3 format players. But yeah, the bigger nations that have that money to throw around, they just want the best team on the park, and they probably don't give a fuck if they've got 11 guys playing in each format, 3 different places in the world, as long as they think they're putting out a good product and putting out a good team. They probably couldn't care less.
The player, I think you're right. That the player will probably have the final say. Like if they're good enough, they can probably do it. I think no matter what, like I think we'll have less and less 3 format players, but it's still going to be a case of if they're a superstar, they'll be able to transfer those skills. I do think like the skills of the 3 formats are starting to move away from each other. Like I think like my sort of example is someone like a Pat Cummins, who is without doubt the best test bowler in the world. I don't think there's much of a discussion. I feel like he's been that for the last 2-3 years. But for some reason, you look at him in the T20s and he's pretty average. And you think, like, how can someone be so good at bowling, not transfer those skills to T20? And I just think that potentially he hasn't had the time to actually work on those skills, because he's like, well, now he's a test captain. He's so invested in test cricket that, like, he still wants to play T20s, and why wouldn't you? Like you said, it's what pays the bills. But I don't know if we'll ever see the best T20 bowler version of Pat Cummins, if you know what I mean.
You say that about Cummins, and you could say that potentially about Hazelwood, but Hazelwood, for some reason, always plays well when he plays international T20s. So it's like, yeah, it comes down to like the one ball batters are now looking for in T20 cricket is like pace on top of off stump, like heavy length, which is probably Pat Cummins' strength, which like if you have to defend for 4 days is fucking hard. But if you just have to try and like hit it over the stands, it's actually like the ball you're looking for. So yeah, as you said, that skill set that these guys require is actually now more like bowling your Yorkers, having your slower balls. And yeah, Cummins probably just is an example of someone that probably hasn't spent the time on the circuit to develop that and those skill sets.
And I think it is an interesting thing though, because you did right with the bowling, and we'll just use Cummins on that example. Like, he's a guy that, and Hazelwood, I guess, although he is bowling well in the T20s, but like a lot of these test bowlers are guys that hit the same length over and over and just set you up. But it's not really possible, obviously, when you've only got 4 overs to work with. Like even in that last test, I think like the first few overs Aussie bowled obviously was a bit like, they were criticising it quite a bit, and I don't think it was that bad. But it was like, he didn't get his radar going for a few overs, and in T20s that'd be it for him. In Test cricket, he can actually bowl a 6, 7, 8 over spell and sort of work the guy over. So there is a big difference there. But then on the other hand, it feels like batting's never felt sort of closer together between like T20s and Tests away. So it is the bowling. I definitely agree. It's like there is 2 different lengths to bowl, T20s and Tests, but then on the other side, as I say, batting just feels like it's almost the same cricket at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember Peterson talking about it when he started doing the T20 circuit. Like, he was sort of one of the early pioneers of that. And I think he was playing 3, maybe 4, but he was still playing like red ball cricket for his county. And he was just like, I actually just need time batting to like feel like I'm a batter. because he basically was like, well, if I go to these leagues and have a shit 10 games, I might face 100 balls in a game in 6 weeks. And then he's like, well, I'm nowhere. Like, I play one day of red ball cricket and I face double that. So it's interesting because the batting side of it, there's that batsmanship, and nothing for batters like actually hitting balls in games, no matter what that sort of format is. So, batters, I think, seems to be the more cricket they play, the better they seem to go. But the bowlers, as Crom said, it's just drawing further apart for the bowlers. So you probably see more batters doing it, but you don't see many bowlers doing it, and that's probably going to get like a bigger and bigger gap.
Do we think, like, I know I put that question to you guys the other day in our chat, but do we think the schedules could allow the bowlers to be 3 format players a bit more if we scheduled a bit better instead of just chopping and changing formats all over the show? Like, I think it was that video from Brad Hogg that just he was sort of saying like older bowlers are a bit more conditioned. Like, his theory was they're more conditioned because they were just playing the same format a lot, whereas nowadays bowlers have to change formats all the time, and therefore they can't sort of like, it's hard. It must be hard to get their loads. Like, Jackson, you'll probably understand that a bit more than I would. But do you think there's something that could be done there with the schedules?
Yeah, it is tough because, I mean, you look at the schedules could be adjusted, but the problem is the schedules, especially for smaller domestic comps, are always going to be like to schedule the big money stuff during like the best time. So like if you take New Zealand, for example, we start with first class cricket, then a bit of one day cricket, Super Smashes over the summer break, and then like we reverse out. So we do one day cricket and then red ball cricket to finish. And it's basically just because that's your window to make revenue, because you've got people on holiday, people want things to do, people have time on their hand, the weather's the best, like all of that plays into it. Whereas if you did it the other way around and you had half the Super Smash in like shitty cold conditions in September, and then in April when everyone's sick of cricket, like the money's just going to go away, and you're going to have first class cricket getting played over Christmas and like no one's going to come and watch that. So it's all comes down to revenue, and unfortunately that's going to hinder the way, because ideally you would do T20s at the start, then one day then red ball cricket to finish, and you just try and mar that up. But because the Black Caps play year round, you're never going to be able to do sort of seasonal for the Black Caps. And then the domestic game is so centered around having the sort of premier competition when there's people around looking for things to do.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. Like, could a schedule be, done better to make loads, easier for bowlers and build up and everything? Absolutely, but I just don't think that's where anyone's head's at the moment. I think they'll just, as I say, we're just thinking like there's going to be guys that some play T20, some play Tests, and that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah. No, well summed up, boys. I think to sum up, could it be better? Yes. Will it get better? Probably not. So our next question is a good one, because we were just talking about losing revenue. Why is it if a test finishes in 2 days because of spin, it's a problem, but 2 days for seamers, it's a contest? From the real Sheldon 69. Fuck's sakes. Well, it could be like a Verinda Sehwag sort of burner there, actually. Now, obviously, this is this to do with the Gabba test between South Africa and Australia, where we had the first 2-day test in Australia since the 1930s or something. So that's 3 days of revenue gone. How you going? South Africa all out for 142, Australia 218 in reply. South Africa 99 all out. Australia losing 4 wickets, chasing 30-odd. 34 wickets in 2 days. All the Indians licking their lips, ready to spray everyone, I bet. Sehwag had an interesting tweet saying 142 overs and not even lasting 2 days, and they have the audacity to lecture on what kind of pitches we need. Had it happened in India, it would have been labelled the end of Test cricket, ruining Test cricket and whatnot. the hypocrisy is mind-blowing. Now, obviously, the 2-day test he's referring to is the India and England one in 2021 when England got pantsed. I've got a couple of questions I'll put out there, and then I'll hand over to you boys. First of all, Virendra, can't both wickets just be bad? Like, I'm not sure there's many people questioning whether or not it's a pitch that's good for batting or bowling. And that also doesn't make a Bunsen burner a good pitch either. Like, they're just both shit. Lastly, to completely contradict myself, why do I find these 2-day shootouts so bloody good to watch? Like watching Australia chase 30-odd with Rabada just breathing fire the other night was unbelievable. Boys, your thoughts?
Yeah, bit to unpack from the real Sheldon 69. We'll leave it up to a few of the boys in the comments to think who that could be. But yeah, I think like my biggest thing for why it seems that a Bunsen burner is like way worse than what happens at the Gabba is because you've got to actually like prepare a wicket beyond a good wicket to turn it into a Bunsen burner. Like you can't just fucking take the Gabba and overnight like turn that into a Bunsen burner. Like in a couple of days, the Gabba would have been a road and a pretty good surface. Like that was just underdone. But like you've actually got to be like, right, we've got to like make this fucking dry. We've got to try our best to make sure it's going to break up. Like you've actually got to put in quite a bit of work to make sure it spins. Whereas like producing something at the Gabba, water it a bit, leave heaps of grass on it and roll it hard so it's like going to do bits. It's almost like the effort that goes into it. Like if you make a Bunsen burner,
underprepared, isn't it?
Yeah, like if you make a Bunsen burner, you've like overcooked it. You've gone out of your way to make sure it's going to be like that. Whereas I think the Gabba, like just a touch underdone. Like, did he have the schedule wrong? Maybe he thought like that test was supposed to start Sunday potentially. Just got the calendar wrong. Sorry, boys. But yeah, and as you said, shit, it's fucking spectacle, isn't it? I reckon if it goes into 2 days, add a third innings for each team.
That's outrageous as a batsman to think about failing 3 times in one. I'll tell you that now.
Dave Warner will be like, nah.
If I'm on a pair, I'm refusing to bat again. I'll tell you.
Imagine getting a triple pair. Well, what do you actually call that? What do you actually call three ducks? 3 ducks in a game.
Well, I dare say it's never happened before, Matt. So there's no name for it. I mean, like the obvious thing to say here is fast bowling and good fast bowling is just a lot funner to watch. Sorry, India. Like that's the easiest answer to this question of why it was funner. It's because that was a hell of a lot of fun to watch, and watching people, trying to face spin bowling when the ball's not bouncing or it's turning sideways just isn't as fun. That's the first thing. I think why in my head, I guess, and I said this in the chat about, is like in my head this test sort of got a pass is because it wasn't that unpredictable. Like we sort of knew South Africa's batting wasn't up to chop and their bowling was unbelievable. So to see them get rolled and then fire back and roll Aussie, it was almost like it was what we expected to happen. And it felt like really good fast bowling prevailing, and not just shocking batting or any sort of negative cricket. It felt like good, positive, fast bowling, good cricket. So I think there's just a huge difference, like just from a viewing experience, to feel like you're watching really good cricket rather than just watching blokes trying to survive. That was just the biggest difference for me. I think obviously a 2-day test isn't ideal. And like I remember back in the day when Aussie had that superstar team and they kept rolling everyone, 3 or 4 days. And there was actually talk like from Channel 9 over there about what they're going to do about it, like that they weren't prepared to pay for a 5th day of cricket, which is pretty unbelievable. But yeah, so do I want 2-day cricket to continue? No, but is what we've seen in that test match a lot better than watching a dust bowl in India? I'm sorry, but it is.
Well, I think I've sort of come around on the dust bowl pitch as being exciting just because we've been watching some fucking dreadful cricket in Pakistan outside of this England stuff. Like both of them are far better than like batting paradises. So like a 5-day draw, like that's just that both teams are just racking up 600. like that's got to be in the bin, and I would rather watch 2-day shootouts than that, like on either pitches. But I just think like we're not far away from the secret sauce here for Test cricket. Like we're not that far. We're pretty close. Like it just felt like there was something in that watching ball dominate bat, but maybe not that much. Maybe just like a fraction too much spice. Mainly because like you've got two unbelievable attacks, and you've got one decent batting lineup. Like because it was funny. Like I could have watched South Africa bowl to Australia all like for fucking 5 days straight.
100%.
But watching South Africa bat, it was like, they just don't look good. Like it was sort of different. It was like we just need a little bit less juice in the wicket. Just give it a bit more, like just prepare a little bit, but still, we want the ball to dominate the bat, but maybe not that much.
I think Aussie's innings was more close to what we would have. If we could have got 4 innings like Aussie's, where guys are having to dig in and work hard, but like a couple of them can actually do it and play their shots like Trevor's Head and Steve Smith to a smaller extent there. Like that seemed a good level of. If you got 4 innings of that, and it goes sort of 4 days. That's a
4
Test match
days.
you get on board.
I think the problem is that pitch was getting harder and harder to bat. Just like the first day was probably the best day to bat. Like it was soft, and then like it was like it was having those it was too soft, and then like there was like indentations from the ball, and then as the pitch was quickening up, there was like it was just divots. So like it would like one would rear up, then one would rear down, and it's like you don't need like Australia don't need that to get these South African batters out. So that's probably where it went astray. But like you said, Lugsy, like if you get 200, around like 4 scores around 200, and I think I'm into that.
I mean, and also like a team could always get rolled because we've got 2020 sides getting rolled for 15 out here. So some responsibility. Some responsibility on the batting, please.
What do you think that pitch got rated?
Oh, superb.
Oh, it's one of the best highlight packages you watch.
Yeah, genuinely, they were lucky to get to 15. They should have been almost bowled out for single figures. Like they were 15 was far away at one point.
Yeah, clapping one boundary.
Yeah,
one boundary.
10 for 9, and that guy has just been like done all like ends over defending, but just a huge inside edge down for 4. It was like, last partnership was 6 runs.
Would not. I mean,
Rear-guard action.
Do we dare touch on a few moments we've been involved in games like this, or one in particular?
It sounds like it's on the tip of your tongue there, Lugsy. Do you want to lead us off with a potential example?
Well, if we could just get producer Gav to focus the camera on me here, could cut this one up for the tube. But
turn the TikTok camera on.
There was an experience I was involved in sort of a few years ago now, similar to timing to a time like this, where I think Christmas might have been Monday or Tuesday. So there was a bit of debate if they'd play the round before that. So it was very close. And obviously the game went ahead. So the game was on like the 22nd or something. And obviously the Friday night before, very close to Christmas. And more importantly, sort of very close to Tradies Day.
Yeah.
So Tradies happened to be the Friday night.
Yeah, day after.
Yeah. There was a fair bit of talk about like, are we going to, is there a chance we postpone this game because there's probably going to be a few sore heads around, whatnot. We may or may not have spoken to GI. I think they were keen to play, so it all went ahead. Long story short, obviously we've got on the booze the night before, to the point where I'm having a shot with one Harry Jones at 9 a.m. For a 9:15 pickup. So I've gone to this game, sort of very booze still. Michael McKenzie, our coach at the time, pretty unimpressed as I rock up. Clearly quite rotten. Not my finest hour. I've gone into the warm-ups and really tried to attack the first ball to make sure I looked good, and I've clean fell on my face. So I'm sort of, at that point I'm head on the ground panicking a wee bit. Thankfully we've won the toss and we've decided to bowl. GI, they haven't warmed up at all, which apparently they never did. But, for a few of us it was still, a bit boots. That really annoyed us. Like, these guys are taking us that lightly.
A strong GI.
A very strong GI side and dare I say quite a poor Tyree side. So they should have taken us lightly. We started the game and we've got a couple early and we're sort of 4 for 2 here and the boys are, quite fizzing and Gregor actually clipped one. I was at square leg. He's clipped one to me and it's actually gone clean from my legs. So Krish is still pulling a bit of his hair out at me and I'm sort of getting a wee bit embarrassed. But anyway, we roll on and we take another couple and we've got them about 9 for 4 and like any sort of time you're thinking like, oh God, there'll probably be someone that comes out and whacks a few. But it just continued. Suddenly we've got them sort of 15 for 5. This is a very good GI side. They're 21 for 6 against the Tyree at Sunnyvale. And they've ended up all out sort of 31-32. And one of the great moments in Tyree history. The one last good part of this is I was meant to bat 4. And obviously Dion Lobb and Blair Soap were opening the bowling for GI. And they've basically came out and probably bowled one of the fastest spells I've seen. Oh, I'm saying 98% of the spell was short. And we've sent Clint Hayward and Sam Pringle out there, and I've never been prouder of those two men. They copped a couple on the chest. They got a couple away, and we've won by 10 wickets. And I tell you what, we're back on the piss by 12:30. So that's probably the biggest one I've been a part of.
That's a dream sort of stuff because, you're sort of right. Normally you have a team, 7, 8 for spit, and then there's always a partnership in there somewhere. I can't remember anything too vividly. Some junior cricket stuff. You see a lot of junior teams get rolled.
We lost 7 wickets in a power play in a T20 once. That was fucking pretty bad.
I have to say we
might have actually been 8. I was
there's
betting
not
at 9.
There's not a lot of time in that power play, eh?
Oh my lord! I came out at 9, and we had he probably did the rounds in his evening, but we had Harsh Visavadaya playing for us. I don't know if you know the name.
Yeah. He played for Tyre a bit.
Yeah, so we 7 down in the power play. I come out to bat, nearly breaks my wrist with a fist pump when I saw him. He goes, fucking me and you, Jacko, we've got 15 overs here. We get us to something. Oh, yeah, sweet, mate. Sounds good. And he's just no wafting outside off, no nothing. We're just going to knuckle down, get through. I'm like, yeah, sweet. He faces the next ball and just has launches into this cover drive, nicks off to the keeper, and then just was honestly what the fuck are you doing, mate? You've just revved me up and then you've snicked off and we've lost 8 in the power play.
Wow. That is, that's quite something. Yeah, on that note, should we move on to our next question, which is around coaching? I'd imagine, Jackie, your coach was pulling his hair out at that point. So this question here is, how much impact do you think the coach plays on culture? From Reese Bailey. A great question from our Reese, of course, former teammate for myself and Jacko. Famously nicked Lockie Ferguson through the slip cordon for 6 as a 17-year-old years ago. Actually, since I brought that up, we do have a question relating to a story I've got about that day. So I'm going to jump the queue and then bring another question in from a Shelford Meads, former teammate of Lugsy and even myself. Because he's actually kind of just asking for a story, but it does relate to Reese, so just sort of bear with me. So he's asked, inspired by Munter's mate bowling bumpers at a third grade team, I would love to hear if the lads have a story around a hothead moment, a moment when someone has just broken character and taken things a little too far. Now, this is about Lockie Ferguson. I will preface it by saying this was a long time ago. I don't know Lockie. I don't know if this is breaking character. I'm going to assume that he's not like this now.
No, it seems pretty on brand from what I see.
Yeah, it's some pretty questionable stuff he was saying, to be fair. We're talking, this is 11 years ago. So it's a long time ago. So he would have been early 20s, if that. And, he's bowling quick, like fucking quick. The quickest I've ever seen in my life. And as I said, we've got guys nicking it through the slips, and he's telling these blokes, like we've got a 17-year-old, we've got another guy. He's telling them, I'm not going to get you out. I'm going to retire you hurt. Now that's
I'd
just
retire, just leave.
I'd bet behind the wicketkeeper, I think.
Yeah, like he's cleaned up Reece. He's cleaned up Reece 3 times.
We do just need to preface this, like nicking through the slip cordon for 6. Like the boundary was inside the 30-metre circle, so it wasn't massive.
Yeah, like it sounds outrageous, but when you see it, like it still is outrageous. But they basically had like 5 third men that like sort of like they were cordons, like you didn't need a third man, and it just goes straight through for 6. And he cleaned up a young Reece Bailey. I believe he cleaned him up. Go? What's that?
How did Cotsy go?
I don't remember. I know he got a duck. I know he sprayed. I know he sprayed Lockie after Reece hit a 6, which I wouldn't rate. But yeah, no, he cleaned up Reece with a no ball, cleaned him up on the free hit, and then cleaned him up for real, which is good stuff. So
yeah, it's when you're probably a bit too good.
So that's my yarn. Boys, you got anything like that, or?
We had a good one. Bloke in a 2-day got a paper bag and slog sweep to stumps, which was probably my favourite one.
Yeah, I think all the stories I have when we're talking about like breaking character are pretty like on brand for the person. Like you've got hotheads in cricket, and they sort of just they go off every few games, and everyone else is pretty calm. We had our opening bowler. Wasn't going to mention his name, but Jack Hunter. He was always very calm on the field, but always a great one for like as soon as he was back in the changing room with a summit or he was actually a big Billy Mav guy. He was just a good one for being like, gee, they sucked, didn't they? Or gee, that guy sucked. Like terrifically nice guy. I wouldn't say a peep on the field, but did love a spray as soon as the boys were in the locker room. Yeah, everyone else was pretty good.
Yeah. No, nice. Always good to see a blow up. I suppose I should get to Reece's question around coach's impact on culture. Look, I reckon it depends on the level of cricket. I think the coach at junior cricket, they have more impact on culture. And as you go up the grades, it's sort of less and less. I think at like the higher level, which is probably where the question is directed, I don't know if they don't not have importance. They probably have. I think they have less importance in terms of impact, like compared to the captain. Just because I think the captain probably has to be the person that actually gets others to buy into what you're doing. Like if you look at Stokes and McCullum.
Probably the root of this question, isn't it? Is it Stokes or McCullum that's causing the revelation for England?
He was actually directing it at New Zealand, but we'll touch on that. But as my example, McCullum, he's potentially sold a vision to Stokes on like this is we can save Test cricket. We're in the entertainment business, but this is your team. We need like. Yep. It's the Stokes' show from then. That's why McCullum's come out and said that he doesn't do anything anymore. He's obviously doing a bit more than that, but I think he just probably helps out putting the pieces in place for Stokes to just play how he wants. What do you boys think?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing like culture comes down to is your coach's relationship probably with your captain. Like your coach. Especially in high-level cricket, you've got your bowling coach, which handles the skill for your bowlers. You've got your batting coach. So your main coach has basically got sort of 2 jobs, and that's strategy and like sort of team morale and sort of trying to be that voice. So, well, this is just my opinion. So I feel like if like McCullum is coming in and he's basically going to Stokes, he's like, right, how do you want to play your cricket, and how can I be the person to facilitate this in the best way? And I think like McCullum hit the nail on the head in terms of like he's creating a culture where like when it's the players succeeding, he wants to put it all on the players. Like in that first test series, he said he's not going to talk to the media when they win, but he'll be the face when they lose. And like you saw that a bit with Crawley. Like Crawley was failing, and and McCullum was like there to be sort of that shield. So I think it depends on the person. Like McCullum's obviously like a culture guy, isn't he? Like New Zealand, arguably, like when we played our best cricket, like most exciting brand of cricket, it's because McCullum was at the helm, and then now he's at the helm of this English side. Like some guys just have that natural, like this is the environment they want to have. But yeah, I mean, I think the coach plays a massive role. Like as we've seen with that Aussie side, like Lang is obviously like a notorious hothead, and that sort of created that culture of guys being on sort of eggshells around him. So it's more your coach's temperament is going to determine like that general feel in the team. Yeah, Lang is obviously like regressed, and Aussie did well, but he still got the sack. But yeah, McCullum obviously has that very like elevates his players when they're doing well, takes the criticism when they're not, and so that's just like giving them even more and more freedom. So yeah, I suppose it's a two-way street, but I think your coach has a lot to do with it really, because they set your dressing room tone. If you don't feel your coach is approachable, or like you feel like he's going to be blowing off at you when you fail and all of that, like it's probably more the performance environment the coach creates, and the performance culture, as opposed to like how good the boys are on the piss sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it is really important, but it's like, as you say, as you get up the levels, like your coach is less skill based now, like as a person, and he's more there to sort of, I mean, it's talked about more, I guess, in other sports other than cricket, but like a lot of these young guys get these older coaches and sort of see them as like father figures, and it's more like creating an environment for the players to where they can be their best, and sort of, especially with a lot of these young guys, it's like a lot of, you know, it's really growing as a person and in that way becoming a better sportsman. So I think it is huge. I think the biggest role is sort of just to make sure there's no issues within a side, and sort of make sure they're respected, I guess. Like you got to, especially in team sports, when you've got like a big blend of players, and probably in personalities, and you need them to all come together and sort of have that one vision and one goal. You really need a coach that is respected. So, I mean, like, it's an interesting one with Baz, because he's one of the sort of younger coaches around. And you feel like if it could, with a lot of other guys, it could almost be like he's too buddy-buddy. But for some reason with him, it seems to be like working perfect. And probably because a lot of these guys have looked up to him. Like that respect is there. So I think that's sort of one of the biggest things with a coach, is like just making sure they're respected, and can bring a team together. It's less sort of about the skill, and everything like that. But so that's where I think Baz is doing unbelievably well. But like, I guess it is sort of, there's different sides to it as well, because you could say Langer lost the locker room and yet they still succeeded. So that's the argument to why I guess it doesn't matter as much as maybe some of us think.
That's a fair point.
Aussie sides of McGrath and Warren, and that they were basically just from all accounts coaching themselves, and sort of anyone could have been in charge there. So there's always different sides of it.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's fair. And McCullum's sort of showing everyone he's still got it, winning that 6-inning competition, which is...
That's one of the sort of the things that made me think, like, with anyone else, this could so easily be like too buddy-buddy and there's not enough respect for him, but he obviously still has that respect as well, as being able to sort of play around with them.
Oh, yeah, the respect is I'm actually still better than you guys. That's where the respect is.
McCullum actually just felt things slipping a touch and got Stokes out there. I called him out.
Yeah, imagine if it was like just a call out, like it's like a WWE sort of championship bout.
Imagine that, like, fuck, this is how we settle things in this camp. It's a 6-inning comp.
Because it is one of those things though, with like, it's probably less talked about in cricket, whereas in like, and maybe it's just because the egos in some of those American sports are just like so much bigger, and these guys are just such big superstars. But like, you always hear about like Phil Jackson and that, their biggest role was just to make everyone believe it's a team rather than, like just Jordan or just Kobe. But it's probably less of a thing in cricket.
Yeah, and I think as well, like cricket is such a, like, especially like probably where culture comes in the most is in Test cricket, because like basically you have to build the culture, because Test cricket is such an examination, like such a long format sport, that you fucking, like, your rah-rah coaches are just never going to get the job done. Like, I mean, like if you use basketball or like rugby or something, for example, like you're looking at, like, you're not out there for 80 minutes, you're out there for 5 days, so you can't have that rah-rah environment. You've almost got to sort of make sure you're a bit more even keel and just make sure guys are in a state to perform, instead of like hyping, like having those ups and downs as such.
If we use like Test cricket as the example, because it was interesting that if we want to talk about the, Kane Williamson stepping down from the Test team and Southey stepping up, but then Gary Stead's sort of staying there and talking about the team, wanting the team to play with a bit more positivity. I found that an interesting sort of statement that he made, because he was part of the side that started to play negatively, if you know what I mean. Like, so is that sort of saying that the coach doesn't have any impact on how they play? I don't know, but it's an interesting one. What do you boys think of the new skipper, and I guess like Gary sticking around?
Yeah, I suppose it's like they want a voice change, don't they? Like Kane is voice 1, Tom's been voice 2, and it just sort of potentially feels like the bowlers just sort of do their own thing and sort of don't have that final word. So yeah, maybe they are looking for just a little bit more freedom. And I suppose Southey's got that moniker of he's a bit more of a jokester, like a bit more of that sort of ilk. But yeah, I don't know. It feels a bit hard done by for Tom. That'll be the red and black man inside of me. But but like, if the message wasn't there, like, I don't know how it's changing by making Southey captain, because as you said, like, the coach is the same, the leadership group's probably exactly the same. Like, you can't tell me Tim was just sitting there twiddling his thumbs for the last 15 years of his career, and then suddenly he's going to be this like team leader. Like, it's probably him, Tom, Kane have been the leadership group since McCullum left. So yeah, I don't really understand how his voice, being the last one, is going to change much in the environment. But I mean, hopefully it does. But yeah, it seems a weird one that you're basically just changing the C next to one of the guys in the same group with the same coach's name, and you're expecting a different result.
Yeah, it is interesting. It'd be interesting to see this first test, if there is any sort of strategy change. I guess the biggest thing we're looking for is are we going to be a bit more aggressive, or is anything going to change there? Because I think it's one thing it's done in sport, and I guess in life as well, is people copy what's succeeding for others. So the next few years in cricket, you'll probably see more and more teams sort of adapt and try and do what England are doing, because it's proving successful at the moment. That obviously that's going to not work for everyone, but it tends to be how sport goes as a style comes in and everyone adapts to it. The Gary Stead thing, you're right, is interesting, because it feels like like with England, with Ruta stepping down and then Baz coming in, it really did feel like quite fresh. Stokes had been in the team obviously as well, but it did seem like they were sort of Stokes. It just needed to be something new, and he was new. It had the support of Root obviously, but with Baz there as well, it did seem a lot different. With, as Jacko said, like, this just feels like we're just switching the C, but maybe not a lot will change. And as Jacko said, we hope it does, and maybe Tim, just with that C next to his name, does feel like he can speak up, even more. It's a tough one with like coach as well, with how long is a good length of time to have a coach in charge. Like,
tough to do all three formats as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can only listen to someone for so long, without starting to feel like he's repeating himself, or it's the same message, or like, as much as the players might respect him, it does feel like, after a while, you're just listening to the same voice, and maybe you do need some fresh ideas. So I don't know. The next few series are going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah. I guess sort of speaking of that, the test squad's been named, and that leads us to another question. Real short to the point stuff. Martin Guptill's still in from Naman K. Singh. Now, I'm going to assume that he's asking about the ODI squad for Pakistan and India. If so, the answer is no. Probably not much else to add to that. I mean, I guess we'll touch on the squad as a whole.
Guptill's at the Renegades, isn't he? Like, I don't think he's in anywhere.
Nah, he's not. So like the squad for those ODIs, you've got we got 3 matches in Pakistan. We've got 3. I think we got 3. We've got 3 in India, I think. After that, might be more. I'm not sure. We've got Kane Williamson. He's just playing the Pakistan ODIs. Tom Latham. He's playing both, but he's captain of India ODIs. Finn Allen, Michael Bracewell, Mark Chapman. He's playing the Indian ones. Devon Conway, friend of the show. Jacob Duffy, India ODIs. Lockie Ferguson, Matt Henry, Adam Milne, Daryl Mitchell, Henry Nichols, Glenn Phillips, Mitchell Santner, Henry Shipley, Ish Sodhi, and Tim Southey's playing the Pakistan ODIs. So I guess the big talking point, friend of the show, Jake Duffy back in the side. They obviously felt the public pressure after we called them out a few times. And Henry Shipley in line to make his Black Caps debut after averaging 11 with the ball in the Ford Trophy this year. Jackie, you probably know a little bit more about him than I do. So he's a bowling all-rounder, or would he be a genuine all-rounder?
Yeah, so friend of the show, Henry Shipley, definitely he's probably more leaning towards a genuine all-rounder.
Nice.
Like he's made the Canterbury side when he's had some injury issues as a batter at times, sort of when the Black Caps have been away and some New Zealand A guys have been away. So yeah, he's actually pretty close, I'd say, to being a genuine all-rounder. And yeah, just a tall timber, gets his arm high, bowls the ball from real height, and gets it doing quite a fair bit. So. I think he's been in the frame for a little bit now. Had some niggly injuries at times when I think a call up was pretty close. So sort of great to see him there. Just he's got all 3 facets of the game are pretty good. So yeah, pretty keen to see how he's going to go at the next level. And yeah, I'm guessing big things are ahead for him.
How quick are we talking?
Yeah, so probably I'm going to say he's into the 130s. Yeah. He's quick and he's tall. Like he's a meter
bounce.
Yeah, like he's sort of Kyle Jameson, like proper height, and he uses all of it with his action. So, definitely a handful. That's like that length always feels like it's hitting stickers, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'd say in the 130s, but feels like a big handful.
Nice. Lugsy, anything you want to touch on with the ODI squad?
Yeah, I guess like the amount of players as sort of you mentioned there of like playing some of the games. Sort of, I guess that's what we've talked about a bit on this pod and others is probably the future. You take more guys than you normally would, and some play these days and some play the different series. It's probably not what we grew up on, but probably is the future. And just, I would say, not the easiest schedule for the boys. I know you've touched on it last week, but we've got Christmas over here. We've had a pretty tough winter, and the boys have been sent to Pakistan and India to enjoy.
Well, I think it's with the squad. I think it's the guys that have India only. They're playing the Pakistan one days and the India one days, aren't they? And I think the T20 squad's getting announced before those games. So
I guess the one positive, and I guess like these young guys will be. The big thing about touring India now is you perform there and you're in line for a wee IPL contract. So I'm assuming it's a pretty exciting tour for the boys, though, as much as we might not rate it in the midst of our summer.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I heard from. I messaged a friend of the show, Jacob Duffy, to congratulate him, and he said, next stop IPL. So
that's where the heads are at.
On his way. Good place to pick some sticks up from the boys. Got sort of the inside word out of that NZA tour. Apparently a few of the guys really were asking the question, is it my bat or my ability that's holding me back?
I've always thought that. I've always thought that myself.
I think after the first game of that tour, they said the sound that some of those guys' bats making was like fucking different gravy, and they've all gone out and dropped like thousands of US dollars on fucking SS cannons.
I would love if something came out in the next few years and like these Indians are just using way different bats.
They're all corked. They're all corked like fucking baseball.
Talking to a few of the boys that went on that tour, it honestly sounds like they could be.
Yeah, cricket needs, we had sandpaper gates. We're a couple of years away from another good scandal, I reckon.
Barry Bonds.
Yeah, it'd be good for the pot, actually.
Called bats.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Okay, righto. I've got one last question. This is basically for Simon, I think. Is Messi the GOAT from HA4R1S? For the very few people that didn't know, this question is obviously about around the Football World Cup final. Argentina, France, penalties, Messi scoring 2, Mbappe a hattie. I mean, I think the GOAT's Don Bradman. That's the GOAT. Lugsy, as a big Ronaldo fan, the biggest I know, do you want to sort of take this question?
Look, I think I was very respectful of Messi on the day. I gave him his moment, the wee rat. I congratulated him. And in all seriousness, the scenes out of Argentina have been unbelievable. Like,
holy, that video of their parade today is like one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen.
That is genuinely like 80-90% of what I love about sport. Like, yeah. I love that can, they're like, 15 guys in that Argentinian team, and they're just making millions of people feel that good.
There's like 4 million people on the streets of Buenos Aires today.
Yeah, it's wild, absolute scenes.
Well, they've had to do their parade in a helicopter because they couldn't get the bus through, apparently.
Oh, man. I mean, if there's any sort of like, you're not sure about, is football the number one sport, really sort of put to bed real quick.
We got about 3 people deep at the All Blacks parade when we won in 2011. So,
So the I'm glad they had their moment. As I said, fair play to the guy. But I mean, first of all, let me just say the word "goat," as I've talked to you about a few weeks ago, like this has got to go. This word,
it's out of control.
It's the most overused word in all of sport.
Out or not out using the word "goat"?
Oh, I've had such a gutsful. And what annoys me most is like people literally be like, "Here are the goats." Like, hang on. Here are the goats. It's the greatest of all time. There's one of them, and that's it. Like there's no goats. Like, I've had an absolute gutsful of that word for starters.
Yeah, is legend not enough? Like, is that not enough anymore? Like, you can't just call people a legend of the game. No, it has to be the goat.
How do you determine the best goat if you've got fucking 8 goats up there?
And also, like, I'll tell you how the amount of Facebook posts I've seen, like, haha, Ronaldo, only the second best player ever. Hold on. Imagine insulting a guy by calling him the second greatest footballer of all time. So ridiculous from everyone posting about that.
Imagine out of every player that's ever played the game, and there's 2 guys that have just like their whole careers have been debated whether either of them's the best, and now one of them wins a World Cup, and it's like, well, Ronaldo, now you're shit.
Yeah.
Oh man, let's see Messi win a Euros.
Yeah, he won't. I'll tell you that.
Who do you reckon are the worst fan, like the fan base disparity between like Messi, Ronaldo, Michael Jordan, LeBron, or like Coley and Baba Azam?
LeBron and Jordan, because you've got that generation gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
LeBron versus Jordan just becomes a like, what year were you born? Because if you're born after fucking probably 95, you're going to say LeBron. And if you're born before that, Jordan's 6 rings are the best thing since sliced bread.
The Bubba versus Coley one's actually sneaky though, because like that's dangerously personal.
Yeah,
it's getting quite political as well. Like it's It's that Indian-Pakistan thing.
Yeah. That definitely comes down to like two nations with a history of not getting along, trying to get their man over the line.
And getting back to the original question, just to end it, like, here's the thing with me, and I'll completely admit it's probably irrational, but like, Messi could have scored 3 goals in every game of that World Cup, gone through unbeaten, and I would have still been sitting here saying Ronaldo's better. So there's just no rationale to it. I think Ronaldo's better. I like Ronaldo more. And
you're always going to back your own horse, aren't you?
Yeah,
100%.
He's better looking, so there you go.
He's better looking, so yeah.
Rig's tighter.
Much better rig.
If we're talking, are we talking rig? We're talking rig based, or
he's got more followers on Instagram.
He would have beat the egg easily.
Unlike Messi.
Didn't he get in a bit of trouble for that?
What was that, sir?
Didn't Ronaldo get in a bit of trouble for that too?
Gav, Jacko's cutting out there.
Very good.
In all seriousness, they're just two unreal players, so just enjoy them both.
100%.
Yeah, I think, and as you get on that, it's like that thing, isn't it? If you get up in arms massively about it, like, why don't you just fucking take a step back and enjoy, like, genuinely watching, like, two of the better players to ever play a sport, like, at their peak, and then just be happy with that.
Yep. At some point, Messi will retire. At some point, Ronaldo will retire. At some point, Coley's going to retire. You know, all these good players are going to retire. Like, just enjoy them while they're here.
And saying that, Kane's the best of the big four, and I'll fucking die on that hill.
Yeah, because any of my friend groups outside of Regan Caldecott tell me Messi's the GOAT, when I know full well they went up at 3:30 a.m. every Saturday and Sunday watching him, then I can't take you seriously.
Just a side note on that Fab Four that you brought up. Just a wee. I was going to wrap up, but you sort of riled me up a little bit there. Really winds me up when people try and say, "Oh, Bubba Azam is now in the Fab Four, or Marnus is in the Fab Four." That's not what the Fab Four is. Like like Coley, Smith, Root, Williamson, they're the Fab Four because they basically all came in at the same time, and they were all good at the same time. That's why they're the Fab Four. It's not because they're the 4 best batters.
No.
Well, I mean they are, but they're on the decline again.
No, you don't call 1 through 4 in the ICC Test rankings the Fab Four, do you? Like, it's a moment in time. It's a way to recognise, like, there was a point in time where these 4 were the fucking best in the world, and like they still are in the upper echelon of players.
100%. Right, okay. Probably should wrap up. Right, there's us for 2022. We're going to catch you guys early January. Boys are having a week off to enjoy their Christmas and New Year's plans. Our family's heading away to the in-laws' crib for a week. Bit of golf, a few beers, bit of water action. Boys, many plans over the break?
Nah, work stews, etc. Year's winding up, so get that out of the way, and then bit of R&R before TMC to the moon in 2023.
Yeah, a bit of R&R for Jacko and a bit of R&A for Cromarty. So we'll venture out into our 13th New Year's at a festival in a row, and we'll see what we can do out there.
It's a true veteran of that sport. Love to see it.
Who's the Messi to your Ronaldo when it comes to going to New Year's festivals, Crom?
I'll tell you what, I'd say Ricky, friend of the show, Ricky Black's getting up there. I swear about 5 years ago we thought it was probably time to wrap it up, and here we are again. So you never know when your last one will be, though, so you just got to keep enjoying them.
I think you guys are like pushing each other, like Messi and Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Just pushing each other to be the best.
Yeah, and I'm going to just rescind from the GOAT debate and just sort of watch 2 guys in their prime go to New Year's festies until one of them keels over.
Just a couple of legends.
Oh, perfect. Okay, righto. Massive thank you to our listeners tuning in week to week, anyone who's rated and reviewed, and of course our patrons. It's been around 7 months since we released the first episode, and now we are at 33. Lugsy, Jacko, you guys have really helped take TMC to another level, and hopefully we can continue to grow in 2023. Have a good Christmas, boys, and we will catch you in the new year.
Too easy. Thanks,
Yeah,
mate.
too easy. Merry Christmas. Catches.